Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates the achievements of women in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharon Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, a boutique search firm based in New York. Each week, I have the privilege of learning from incredible leaders as they share their stories. Together, we celebrate their triumphs, explore their challenges, and uncover their vision for the future of bioscience. Our conversations also provide invaluable insights into how women can unlock their unique superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So, whether you're just starting your journey in bioscience, contemplating your next career move, or simply passionate about science and innovation, this podcast is here to empower, inspire, and guide you. Today's guest turned personal tragedy into a driving force for change. Growing up in the Soviet Union, she witnessed firsthand the challenges of chronic illness as her sister battled a life-threatening condition. That experience shaped her relentless pursuit of innovation in healthcare. Despite early rejections from the industry, she refused to take no for an answer, securing her first role in MedTech through sheer determination. Now, a CEO, board member, and advocate for women in healthcare, she's leading the charge in medical innovation and mentorship. Please welcome my guest today, CEO of Vibrato, Juliana Elstad. Juliana, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Sharon. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you too. And thank you so much for joining us. I know it's still the middle of the day for you, isn't it? You're over on the West Coast. Whereabouts are you?
So I'm based in Orange County, California. So West Coast.
Okay. So I knew you were a few hours behind us. So you've still got a few more hours of your Friday to go before you can pack up for the weekend.
But it's a nice way to finish the work week with a coffee
well, let's see.
with you.
You might live to regret that in a couple of minutes, but there you go. Well, I don't know you very well. We've had a couple of interactions, and I've followed your journey and your posts. Your story really kind of fascinated me as to why medicine is so important to you, and how did you start? How did you pick the industry? Did it pick you? What drove you to following the bioscience space?
Yes. So when I was born and when I was a little girl, I always wanted to have a sibling.
Okay.
And I was the one asking my parents, like, oh, can I have a sister? Can I have a brother? And I'm sure that's not why my parents decided to have a second child. But when I was 7 years old, my little sister was born, and her name is Veronica. I was very excited, but Veronica was born with a chronic disease. And so from the age of 7, for the rest of my life, I was able to see what it's like to have a chronic disease. And that affected me and my family more than a lot of other things. I grew up in the Soviet Union. I went through the collapse of the Soviet Union. I went through food rationing, 200% inflation, like a lot of things. But despite all of this, I think health, that's experience, firsthand experience really showed me that health is the most important thing. There is a saying, I think there is an Indian or like Asian proverb that says, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes. A sick person has only one. And I think that summarizes it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I can really, with my sister, when she was born, different physicians, it was a neurological disorder, but different physicians gave different diagnoses. And that really showed me how windy a path of a patient could be and what it means to be misdiagnosed, or all these people who are undiagnosed because they cannot find the right physician. And then even that, so my parents, my family tried everything, looking for technologists all over the world. My sister's medical records were at some point reviewed by Cleveland Clinic, and also we tried acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and everything in between. So it was very broad range. And that also shows me how important to have new therapies, because all these patients that very often they don't have time to wait. And unfortunately, my sister passed away several years ago at the age of 33. And that forever showed me, if we go and we waste a day, a week, there might be someone there who is waiting for this therapy who might not have that time to wait. And that ultimately what drives me and what brought me into healthcare industry overall.
Right.
But it wasn't a straight, it's looking back, it's always easy to say, wasn't it obvious that that's what I should do? But it wasn't. I went into diplomatic college, I studied economics, then I worked for an accounting firm, then I worked for a management consulting firm. It wasn't until I was 25 that I really thought that, okay, this is what I want to do, is able to connect the dots.
So you tried everything to get away from doing really what you were born to do.
Yeah. But even when I realized, okay, I should go into healthcare, nobody wanted me into healthcare. I can tell you that. So I was doing my MBA at the time, and I wanted to go into MedTech. I applied for many companies. Not a single medical healthcare company invited me for an interview even. So when I was doing my MBA at Wharton, the school had a policy that a student can request one interview and the company has to respond. So from all the companies, you can request one interview. And I requested an interview with Medtronic, and they couldn't, and because of the policy.
But they weren't allowed to say no. They had to see you.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's, and after the interview and everything else, that's where I went to work after MBA 20 something years ago.
Okay. So you forced the one company to interview you, and that company saw what you were about and they hired you.
They did hire me, yes. So again, I think it was a combination of persistence and luck,
And bad luck to all those ones that wouldn't interview you. I mean, they were kicking themselves after a short period of time.
Well, I don't know about that, but that really shows that sometimes when people look and they say, I want someone who's done this for 10 years already, I didn't fit into that. But I was passionate about it, and it was a thoughtful decision of why I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Okay. And I know that as part of your story with your sister, there was a time that you found a treatment for her that extended her life by 10 years, I believe. Were you already in the field by the time you did that? So you were calling on your connections, and this was something you already knew the people to call and where to bring people in?
Yeah, so my family is from Russia, from the Soviet Union, which is Russia now. So I was living in the US at that time, was 2007, and I get a call from my parents. Your sister is in a hospital. She has a tumor, and we don't know what it is. And physicians are not sure how many days or weeks she has left.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, I jumped on the plane. I was within 2 days. I was in Moscow. Shortly after that, in different healthcare systems, things are done differently and take time. Like the biopsy on the tumor took 3 days to get the results. And luckily, it was benign, but physicians say that they couldn't operate because the tumor was growing on the nerves around the spinal cord. Right. And it's impossible to separate them from the nervous system. And even if they do it, they will damage, and she would be a vegetable. And went through all of this, and physician after physician was saying inoperable. And the way how it was all discovered is because this tumor grew and was pushing on the stomach, and my sister essentially couldn't eat. She would throw up. So she was on IV. So they were giving her couple of weeks and so on. And so when I was in the US, I got to know some people in the company from emerging markets. And so through that, I was just asking everyone and ultimately got referred to this one neurosurgeon in Moscow who said, okay, I'll do it. It was 9-hour surgery.
Yeah.
But he was able to do that. And again, because my sister was young at that time, recovery and everything else went well. She was 23 at that time.
Wow. I bet people don't mess with you when you're on a mission, do they, Juliana?
Well, I think with age, we get a little bit wiser. I can tell you 10, 20 years ago, I saw the goal and I would go straight to it. And, and I was very unapologetic.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. So how has your career progressed within healthcare? I know that you on the Women in Bio board, or you joined them for a while. I know you've been heavily involved in the space. What does that look like? What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah. So after my MBA and went to Medtronic, spent 5 years there. I did strategy and I did finance and business development, meaning like M&A, minority investments, licensing, all those things.
Yep.
And that's how I got to know a lot of startups. And I was really inspired by entrepreneurs, by those CEOs who say, yes, we can do it. Yes, we don't know exactly how, but we can do it, right? And we will solve this. We'll figure it out. And there was inspiration, there was the drive, there was the urgency, obviously innovation as like foundation of all of it. Yep. And I got really attracted to that. So I left. And so I worked for a small healthcare fund for about a year. And then I went into a startup and we sold that startup to Boston Scientific. And I was like, wow, it's so fun, and I got hooked up after that. And I've been in several startups since then, trying to bring new technologies to market. And also in the last probably 5 years, I've been on several boards, private and public company boards, as well as some industry organizations. I am a member of Women in Bio. I'm not on the board of that organization.
Right.
I'm on the board of Advamed, which is a MedTech organization. And also I've been on the board of a provider. I've been on a few medical technology companies. So I don't do very many boards. I just don't want to give wrong impression. I try to do a couple, maybe.
The ones that kind of speak to you, I would say.
Yes. And again, I think it's very different. I think the industry association boards, this is really volunteering, right? But it's a great opportunity to see the industry coming together because especially in smaller entrepreneurial companies, we are not really competitors. We are different therapeutic areas. It's very rarely that we really have the same patient and the same treatment.
Yep.
But there are so many issues that affect all of us, right? Whether it's FDA layoff, whether it's reimbursement, NIH, and how NIH funds innovation and research, how to build relationship with physicians and hospitals. There is so much that we can do as an industry, and I love to see that cooperation.
And how have you found that, both with the startups that you've been involved with and the boards that you've been on, as a woman making her way through doing this? What are the challenges that you've found? Do we have enough time?
I'll tell you a story. A couple years ago, I was there is an organization maybe you're familiar with called Women Business Leaders in Healthcare, WBL.
Yep.
And so there was a session and there were about 300 female executives in healthcare in the room. And the speaker asked the question, how many of you have heard no during your career to your promotion, to some opportunity that you think you deserved but didn't get? You probably know what % of women raised their hand.
Practically all of them.
Every single one.
Yeah.
300 women in the room, right?
Yeah.
And what I tell people after that, wherever you are in your career journey, if you hear a no, just take it as a part of your journey to the top. You want to be an executive, you need to handle a no.
Yep.
And not make it so that you cannot move forward, right? You will hear a no. And actually, maybe it's a testing, because in business, you also hear a no. Like, there will be an investor who will say no to your company. There will be a partner who is not going to sign a contract with you, right? And take it as there is some people who will say no to you, right? But it is very true, like you look at the statistics, only 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Even though if you look at graduates, the majority of college graduates are women, right? So there is definitely a disconnect. It's not because of the skills or education level. So, I was in companies and organizations sometimes where I had to fight for my seat at the table. So I'll give you another story. So I do have consulting McKinsey experience, and after that I come and I was put in charge to coordinate the strategic planning for a company, for a business unit. And there is strategic planning meeting, big table, there is general manager, there are all vice presidents of every function in the room, and they all sit at the table. And I sit at that table too. And VP of HR comes and says, "Oh, you cannot sit at that table because you are not a vice president." And it didn't matter that it was my task to facilitate. I said, "Look, you need to sit in the back by the wall." I'm not the person who pays so much attention to hierarchy and all of that. So I was really surprised. And I was like a little bit speechless for a moment. In that particular situation, I got lucky because vice president of new therapies in that business unit said like, "Oh no, it's okay. Juliana can sit here." And he kind of protected me.
Right.
But I can tell you a year after that, I was in a different setting and exactly the same thing happened. And at that time, nobody stood up for me. And I said, okay. And I went and I sat at the back. So, but I'm telling this story because for the new generation of female leaders, never say no to the opportunity to have a seat at the table, because so many of us had to fight for that seat at the table. And don't doubt yourself saying, well, because sometimes I hear, especially women who are younger in their careers, I don't have that VP title. Should I be sitting at the table? Yes, you should. You absolutely should, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of it's in a lot of industries, even in my industry, in the recruitment industry. I remember going to a regional directors meeting, and I was the only female regional director. And when you're there and you're kind of, milling around before the meeting starts, one of the bigwig people came over and said, "Can I get 2 coffees, one with milk and one?" And I was like, "Sorry, really? Because I'm the woman in the room, you think I'm going to go make you the coffee? Don't think so. You can go make your own coffee." But it took me, took me aback.
This story is so common. I heard it from other women more than once. And so like the best answer that I heard, like if someone is asking you to do, I said like, "Oh, I would like some coffee too with milk. That sounds great."
Yeah. But when you go find somebody else to make it, because it's not going to be me.
Yeah.
So where are you at now?
So I'm a CEO of Vibrato Medical. It is a medical device company. We use ultrasound as a therapy to treat peripheral vascular disease. So essentially, in a non-invasive way, we improve the blood flow for patients to their legs and for patients who do not have enough blood flow. And what it means is that if you don't have enough blood flow to your legs, that leads to pain, even when you're not walking, to wounds that do not heal, ultimately progressing to gangrene and amputation. So we're at clinical trial stage, so we are not on the market quite yet, but that's the therapy, and it's, interactions with patients always is such an interesting, pleasant experience because patients are always so grateful.
Oh, I bet.
It's what makes us all going.
Okay. And what made you choose that? What was your interest in that area, or was it something to get involved with?
Yeah. So I've been in several startups in different therapeutic areas. So the things that I like about this opportunity, first, it's a large market with unmet clinical needs. There are 18 million people with peripheral arterial disease in the US, 200 million worldwide, and current treatments for advanced stage of peripheral arterial disease called chronic limb-threatening ischemia. So the treatments are all invasive. It's stents, drug-coated balloons, it's surgical bypass. So it's different revascularization procedures or for patients who are not candidates for that amputation. So we can do better than that. Yeah, right? Like we don't need to amputate toes and foot and calves of patients. So that's really what drives my interest into that. And to do it in a non-invasive way without even a skin incision.
Yep.
I think that's the technology, when I looked at that at a very, very early stage, right? Like we didn't have any human data, but nothing. So, but I thought like, we need to at least try. Like it would be a disservice to the world and the patients to have that potential and not to explore it and not to see what it could be. And so that's why I chose Vibrato.
And can it reverse the damage that is already there? So if somebody is almost at, oh, this looks like it's going to need to be an amputation, is it something that can reverse it back so that that's then not necessary?
Yes, but, right?
Theoretically, but.
No, it's so look, if in our clinical trials, we did show disease reversal.
Right.
However, you need to fit the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So again, if you have gangrene already and it's bad, I cannot help you. There are patients who are too sick.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are 6 classes of disease progression.
Right.
So if you're the last class 6, you're too late. But if you're before that, then yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we have demonstrated it in the clinical trials.
Excellent. Okay. So what else for you? You seem to be doing all sorts of interesting things at the moment. Do you have anything in the pipeline, anything else that you're looking to get involved in?
Well, I don't want to sound so...
That you can tell us about at this stage?
Yes, I can tell you about it. I just don't want it to sound like a sales pitch, which it is not. So
sell away.
So I love my MedTech industry. I'm deeply involved in it. We do the MedTech conference, which is the largest conference for medical devices and everything related to that.
Okay.
Including like hospitals, investors, and digital. It's all part of that. So this year in 2025, it's going to be in San Diego, which is my backyard here in October.
San Diego.
So we're just starting the planning for that, and that's a great initiative that I'm looking forward to help out, especially because it's happening in Southern California where I am. We have over 4,000 attendees, and it's a must-have event for many people that want to do anything in the medical technology.
Well, maybe we can do some promotion of it on the show for future episodes as it gets closer. Sure. And you want to start selling those tickets. I don't mind. Everything to me is a sale somewhere along the line. So happy to put some promos together to advertise it for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that would be lovely.
We can have a conversation about that.
Absolutely.
So, going forward, what advice would you give, particularly to women who are entering the healthcare field or want to move forward in that field with what's happening at the moment? There could be some real challenges for people who were expecting to take one path and now maybe can't if areas are being cut, so they're not taking so many students. What would your advice be to somebody who's passionate about the sector but really doesn't know where they should go?
Well, I think if people are really passionate, right, about the sector, I think they should stay in the sector, because if they go somewhere else, then they're not going to be happy, and ultimately that's not the. I think women in particular, in my opinion, are very good and well positioned for entrepreneurship. So if that is something that you're considering, I think women should explore it. And let me give you 2 reasons why. First, when you're an entrepreneur, it removes some of the biases away, because when people, you come and you sell, whether it's like consulting or your product, people think less about, okay, who is the CEO of the company I'm buying from, whether it's product or a service, right? They focus more on the service, right?
Yep.
And so for women, it's good because it's kind of all this other issues that with the promotion and career growth that sometimes women run into. It doesn't solve it completely, but it puts it a little bit in the backseat.
Yep.
And second advantage of entrepreneurship for women specifically is the flexibility. You're not going to work less, but you have more control over your hours. You don't need to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? You don't need to be 9 to 5. And especially if you have young kids or plan to have young kids, it can give you that flexibility that you need to be a mom, a wife, and a successful business person.
And what would you say are the challenges that people are likely to face?
In healthcare?
Yeah, coming into a career in healthcare, and women particularly coming into a career in healthcare. If they're not they're not doing the kind of entrepreneur route, they're going through the companies. And I think, at the early stage, that there are lots of women coming in. The challenge appears to be as they go up the ranks, it's fewer women that go higher than men, obviously. What advice could you give to those women to keep going, to keep pushing, to get higher and not settle at, I made it to director or I made it to VP and I'd love to be part of the C-suite, but I'm not going to happen for me. It's going to get blocked. And it's not, but what do they need to hear from another woman that says, and take that?
Well, I think, again, I would ask the listeners to go back to the discussion about the 300 women, all of them hearing no, right? Like all of them had a choice to say, well, that no. And none of them did. And that's why they got to the C-suite that they are at, right? But essentially, I also think find people who can help you, who can be your advocate, who can be in your corner, right? People are passionate. There is an identity. You need to know who you are, because if someone tells you no, and you say, yeah, maybe it's not for me and I should not make a VP, what you're saying is the judgment of that other person is better than your own judgment about who you are.
Yep.
If you give that power to someone else, maybe you're not going to be a VP or a C-level, right? Like you need to say, I know what my value is. Don't be ignorant. You can take a feedback and say, does it really reflect the truth? Is it something I should change about myself? And sometimes the answer is no. I can tell you, so in my company, my chairman of the board once told me that when you receive a feedback, keep in mind it's less about you and more about the person who gives the feedback.
Okay.
And it is, every one of us, like if I were to give you feedback, I don't know you as well as you know yourself. And I give you feedback based on my bubble that I lived in, right? Based on my experience, based on what I encountered. And that may or may not be the world you live in, right?
Yep.
So I think ultimately, I'm not advocating for being arrogant and dismiss all the feedback, but be rational about it. And if you think you deserve to be VP, and let's say you're a director level, right? So you say like, okay, what are the skills? Do I have that? Do I have the gaps? And if someone says, you're not a VP, you shouldn't sit at the table, you can evaluate that and say, is it best for the company to do that people's voices are not heard? If that you come to the conclusion that the answer is no, then don't take that advice not to sit at the table.
Yeah, I think great piece of advice. And I do think it is, the feedback somebody's giving you is also their perception of something. The perception isn't necessarily the reality, right? So it's doing your own evaluation of, yeah, okay, I agree with that, or that isn't right. And then continuing to move forward on that point and not letting go of that point. I think that's important, that we as women don't just shut up, don't just go, oh, okay, but finding that right way to make the point, because it is difficult. I have a tendency, and have had a lot in my career, which is why I now have my own business rather than working for somebody else, is to be quite bullish. And so you get labeled as difficult, and that doesn't help the situation. But equally, I've seen people step back and not say anything, and then it's perceived as weakness, and then all the bullies in the room seem to feel that they have carte blanche to do their ways. It's a difficult path to follow, but I think when you find it, it's the way to get to the end result. And having other women around, I do think groups like Women in Bio, the CEO Sisterhood, and those sort of groups that are allies and are sounding boards can help those women coming through who may not be playing the game the right way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely think that if you hear a no, it should not stop you from trying in other similar situations. So
I was always taught that no is just a request for more information.
Yeah, well, I think it really depends, because if I'm on the advisory board of something, right, and I'm one of, 10 people, I'll give them my opinion and my advice. It's up to them to take it or not to take it.
Yep.
And if I push them to force to take my advice, it could be too pushy. Think about what role are you in? What are you responsible for, right? I give advice. It's their decision to take it or not. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come 18 months later and they need it to fail to some extent to come okay, it actually in the long term will help your credibility. Yep. Because they'll say, we didn't do what she said, and this is the result that she kind of warned us about, versus if you come and you push them and you convince them to do it your way, and they do it your way, and then for the rest of their life, they're going to wonder if they made the right choice.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, if it is the area of your responsibility, then it's the opposite. Someone gives you an advice. Someone says, no, don't do this. It's your decision to take that or not to take that, right? Yep. And so if you believe that, yes, I heard you, but that doesn't mean you should follow what they say.
And then it's your decision. Then you have to spend the rest of your life worrying whether you took the right decision.
Exactly. And it's better to do something and regret than not to do something and regret.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true indeed. Well, listen, Juliana, thank you. It's been fabulous talking to you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I wish you every success with your product and moving that forward. And genuinely, if we can put some promos together that can promote the event that you have coming up, then more than happy to do so.
Thank you.
And hopefully next time I'm over in California, we can meet up and maybe share a cocktail or something. Or if you come to New York, that's the same thing for that as well. But I wish you every success, and have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll speak again.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you for providing this platform for women to talk about things and not to be afraid, and to understand that, what a particular woman might go through career-wise happens to all of us. And she is not alone in that journey, and that should not stop you from doing what you are passionate about. So I really sincere thank you for doing this podcast for us, for all of us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And, yeah,
it's creating a community. That's the more communities that women can forge, I think the stronger the road ahead can be. And if I can play any small part in that, then for me that's an absolute pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so much, and definitely be in touch, and I'm sure we'll talk live sometime soon.
I'm sure we will. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye. That wraps up today's episode of She Leads Biotech. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and found inspiration in the stories shared. Remember, the success of every woman can inspire another, so don't hesitate to share yours. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm specializing in sourcing talent for small and emerging bioscience companies across the US, from our headquarters in New York. For more information about our services, feel free to reach out at contact@cnaint.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And until next time, stay bold, stay brilliant, and continue pioneering progress for women in bioscience.